Hey, Ange.
Hey Les, how are you?
Doing well.
Good, you looking smashing. Oh man, that shirt is so much better against that background.
Thank you. I don't look like a heel
You
anymore.
do not look like a heel. You look
Okay.
gorgeous. You look gorgeous. Well,
Well,
folks, we're
folks,
here. We're back for another episode
another
of
episode of Black Boomer Besties from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. And we have
We,
another
yes,
guest.
we
Who
do.
is
And I'm
this
so
gorgeous?
excited because she's just this dynamic, fabulous, wonderful, smart, savvy, cool.
All
What
the
do the young people
things.
say? Fire. She's fire.
Fire with a YAH, not a FIRE. All the,
Exactly, a YAH.
we're showing our age, but that's okay.
Yeah, but I'm happy to introduce a beautiful person, a smart lady. We have a board certified dermatologist with us this evening. Her name is Achiamah Osei-Tutu, and anybody that knows me may think that that name is a little bit familiar. And it is because Achiamah is my niece, and she is someone whose trajectory I've watched for many years now. And she's just made me such a proud auntie in the woman that she is, in the brilliant physician that she is. And we brought her on today to talk to you a little bit about something that's important to a lot of people across many spectra. But Achiamah is a dermatologist, and one of her specialties is hair loss and alopecia. So before I go into that a little bit more, I'm going to have Achiamah speak, introduce herself, and we can get started. So welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's so good to be here, and I feel like I need to hang around with you more because you've made me feel so self-esteem back up. Thank you guys for inviting me. I'm humbled and very thankful, and think it's so important to continue to spread the word about the epidemic of hair loss in Black women so that people can get seen and get treated and managed as soon as possible. So I am a board certified dermatologist. I practice in Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn!
Brooklyn.
I'm actually in East Flatbush. I went to downstate for residency, so I'm very, very familiar with this area. My practice is probably like 80% hair loss, and the other 20% comprises mostly acne, hyperpigmentation, and some cosmetic procedures, lots of chemical peels, a little bit of laser, and a little bit of filler and Botox, but lots, mostly hair. And I do everything with respect to hair. I do non-surgical and surgical hair restoration, including hair transplants, various injections. We also have a stylist who is in the office as well. Diane
Wow.
has been an amazing addition, really partnering with me to help to provide various options for patients suffering with hair loss in terms of styling is concerned. So it is my absolute passion. And fortunately or unfortunately, a few months ago, I was also diagnosed with one of the very common hair loss conditions that I see in my clinic. So it's now a personal crusade of mine. And
Mm.
this is why I actually got started uh, even interested in this is because a family member of ours developed alopecia when she was in her 20s. I'm now 47, so she's had it for a long time. And but unfortunately, by the time that I learned everything, it was a bit late. She already had significant scarring. So when I see patients in front of me, I really do see her and try to use it as an opportunity to sort of pay back what I couldn't really do for her. So it's a
Mm.
passion of mine. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. Listen, I just need to make a little segue after that wonderful welcome and uh, all of the information that you presented. Just before we started recording, I've heard of Achama for forever. I'm meeting her now for the first time. I've heard her voice. probably talked on the phone, but we just realized that her office is directly across the street from where I lived throughout high school and early in my college years. Actually, no, it was all throughout college too. I don't even remember. But it's where I lived when Leslie and I started hanging out together. And now Achiamah, it is such a small world. It is such a small world. It is so crazy. It's so crazy. So I just had to just because I my mind is blown. When you said 84, Lind, I my mind was blown. Anyway, I think that when the thing that drives one to pursue something that becomes their life, their life goal, their life passion, it is so beautiful that you made this commitment because of someone, a particular person that you wanted to help, and now you're helping hundreds and thousands of people. And so even though you were not trained to where you are now to help her, that she is the cause for you being able to help so many. And so, a particular interest we had in having you on, beyond you being this brilliant person that we wanted to present to the world, is that your focus is on hair loss in Black folks. And that is so important to Leslie and I. Um, we love everyone. Why do people always say that? We love everyone, but we love everyone. The more that we try to just think of, well, everyone, blah, 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 that often leads to ignoring the groups that aren't served by the broad. And so it is particularly important to Leslie and I to have you on to talk about hair loss in Black men and women. And the fact that that is what you specialize in, it's just all goodness. A little later on, I actually asked my list, my email list, which is
Your squad.
friends and clients and supporters, if they had questions for you. And so many, I didn't give them a lot of warning. So later on, I'll ask some of those questions. But tell us a little bit about your story. Like, where did this all start? Where are you from? And those types of things.
Well, I'm from Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually born in Ghana and came here when I was about 2 or 3.
Okay.
We live in Brooklyn,
Mm-hmm.
actually on Beverly Road. So same in East Flatbush. I'm not too far away from where I was. And then we moved to Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
I was about 10 years old, and I went to Catholic school. Actually, my whole life I went to Catholic school.
Right.
I went to St. Anthony's on
Mm-hmm.
Long Island, and then went to Binghamton for university, and then did a master's in public health after I was done at the University of Illinois Chicago. And then I went to Stony Brook Medical School, took a year off, and did a Howard Hughes fellowship. And I looked at pediatric sarcomas and did some immunology work. And then went to Mount Sinai for a year for internship. And I loved, can I say just, I loved my Mount Sinai medicine internship. Great experience. It's a great hospital. And I had great mentors there. And almost was like, oh, I want to switch to medicine. That's just what a great time I had.
Wow.
And then did my dermatology residency at Downstate. And my last year I was a chief resident. And then afterwards, I, did a little bit of working for other people, and probably a year out, I started my private practice. I was on Long Island for a long time, probably for, I would say, maybe 8 years or so. And then recently, in the last 2-3 years post-pandemic, I've been exclusively in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Wow. Nice. Very nice. All right, Les,
So-
I can hog. I
know
just
you
want to
can.
talk to her. Yeah. So you have to jump in. Go ahead.
So I just want to mention that when we initially contacted you about being a guest on our podcast. We asked you to speak about some of the dermatologic skin problems that manifest in women of an older age. And that's when you said to me, wait a minute. I've had 3 patients in my office just last week crying about hair loss, and that the
Yeah,
issue that needs to be out there and discussed is
absolutely,
hair loss. These
absolutely.
other skin issues can come later, but it's critical right now. And it's hair loss, as you said, is a big problem in our community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Here's another thing that's interesting. You mentioned one of our family members that had alopecia. Um, I was speaking to Omari today and told him that I would be interviewing you today. And he said, wow, that's a coincidence, Mom. I was just speaking to one of my colleagues today about alopecia. You may or may not remember, but Omari presented with alopecia, and that was one of the ways that was helpful in diagnosing his lupus.
Aha, now that you, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I think you did his skin biopsy, actually, another confirmatory test for his lupus. But he went to the barber one day. This was many, many years ago, and he came home and said, Mom, after he got the short haircut, the barber, you know, um, cut a bald spot into my head.
Mm.
Wasn't a bald spot. It was
Well, it
a
wasn't cut by the
quarter.
barber.
Right. It was a silver dollar sized bald spot in the back of his head.
Wow.
And then months later, he went on a Caribbean trip and came home with the mala rash, et cetera, et cetera. So we finally put everything together. I'm like, that's not sunburn. That's,
Well,
So,
I think that that's very important that you just said that, right? It speaks to the point that when somebody does have hair loss, we don't just say it's hair loss, right? Because it can be a manifestation of systemic disease. Oftentimes
Mm-hmm.
people say, oh, it's a stress spot. You can put an oil on it. And it just really emphasizes the point that if you have an area of hair loss, you should go seek the advice and recommendation of a dermatologist so that
mm,
it's better to, go in and say, oh, there's nothing wrong. It's fine.
Right.
For you to go on for months and or years and be diagnosed with something that somebody actually can't help you with because you've
Yeah.
waited.
right.
Yeah.
I'll be booking an appointment, so just look out for that phone call. Absolutely, because there's some little thinning, that's one thing. And although I want that to stop, I associate that with age. But
Sure.
I see some areas that are just smooth. They're not very big right now, but there may be 3 in a 1 or 2 inch radius. I'll see 3 little spots that doesn't look like too much is going on there. And I think you're right that just go get a yes or no. Just find out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've mentioned the word alopecia a few times, so have you. What is that? What is it?
So alopecia is an umbrella term for hair loss. And as dermatologists, we tend to categorize it in 2 ways. So we have non-scarring and scarring. So with non-scarring, the hair follicle underneath the microscope or underneath the skin is still intact, right? But there's some biologic process, whether it be systemic, whether you're taking medications, post-pregnancy, for instance, chemo,
I've heard that.
autoimmune alopecia areata, where there's an immune attack around the hair follicle. But with medications or with a resolution of the systemic issue, the hair can usually grow back because the areas of the hair follicle that actually grow the hair are still intact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
However, with scarring alopecia, inflammation, the hair follicle is a primary target of the inflammation. And if left long enough, the inflammation leads to scarring because the inflammatory cells will recruit scar cells.
Mm.
Once that scar lays down around the follicle, it renders it completely inactive and quote unquote.
Oh.
And so
Wow.
that's why it's really important to identify what category of alopecia it is, because sometimes they look very variable. you can have multiple types of alopecia on one head, right?
Wow.
So you have to identify.
Whoa.
Yes, sure. I have people with 2 and 3 types of alopecia, even clinically, and then also with biopsy as well.
Wow.
Wow.
And then, you know, once you do that, then you want to identify the subtype of non-scarring or scarring alopecia, because under those categories, there are multiple names. So nobody should ever tell you, I have alopecia. It has to have a first, as my colleague Yolanda Lenzi says, Dr. Yolanda Lenzi, it has to have a first name and a last name. Because that name will help us to identify what treatment modalities we can use.
I see.
Wow.
So I've heard of alopecia areata.
Yep. So alopecia areata is an autoimmune type of non-scarring alopecia, where the body, for some reason, sees one of the hair follicle components as foreign, right? Because the immune system is supposed to protect us against various infections and viruses and cancers. But unfortunately, sometimes our self cells, the reason why we all don't disintegrate is because our body doesn't fight against ourselves. But in this situation, the body sees one of the hair proteins as foreign and it starts to attack it. And then you get basically cessation of the hair growth cycle. And then you get a circular bald spot. And those happen, you know, kind of rather suddenly. Various stressful situations can exacerbate them because we all also have stress receptors on our hair follicles, right?
What? Wait, stop.
Yes.
What?
Answer. Wait, stop.
What?
We have stress receptors on our hair follicles. And
all right, so here I am.
Yeah. So
what are you doing, Les? I am growing my hair.
Managing patients.
What the heck?
Are you kidding me, Achiamah? No way.
It's not, but you know, the cycling of the hair is regulated by so many things that we're even yet to find out, but it's a very complicated dance, even though, it's growing at a constant pace. It takes a lot to get it there. And that's why if you have a thyroid problem, you can get shedding, right? Because it just kind of throws the whole cycle off. But yeah, so alopecia areata usually happens in about 2% of the population. Most of the time you get like little patches that even without treatment can sometimes grow by themselves. You know, it's interesting. I'll see these commercials on a various hair growth oil. And it says, oh, I use the hair growth oil. And then within a few months, like my hair grew back, right? And oftentimes they show pictures of alopecia areata. And 75% of these patches can grow back on their own without even the help of a doctor.
I see.
Right? And so, okay, was it the oil or the body just kind of healing?
Or that you're massaging, that the follicles, you're stimulating them. Yeah. Wow.
So that's one that we see very commonly in the office.
I see.
But the one that typically affects, that we see a lot in Black women, is traction alopecia, right? That we get from repetitive pension type hairstyles. And you don't just see traction alopecia in Black women, right? We see that any person, Black, white, or anybody who tends to pull their hair in a way that it doesn't necessarily naturally flow. So
so now I'm gonna sit back and take the rubber band out of my hair.
That's right. That's
okay.
Exactly. So you take a ballerina who constantly has their hair in a ponytail, or a Sikh man who wears a turban, sumo wrestlers, and of course with being a woman of and all the beautiful hairstyles that we have available to us.
Right.
Unfortunately, because of time, expense, life, we can constantly get in a cycle of repeating these styles over and over again. And then unfortunately, sometimes you'll notice some thinning and then you'll do it again to kind of cover some areas.
Right. Wow.
And that can, create a situation where you get traction alopecia. And traction alopecia is one condition that you don't have to have.
Right.
We don't have to have thin edges. That is an unfortunate choice that we make subconsciously or consciously because of the styles that we do.
That's a choice, ladies and gentlemen, a choice. Yeah. We're going to talk about that because there are many things that are choices, but
there's no judgment, because the reason why we choose a particular hairstyle is based on so many sort of psychosocial reasons, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have a family, you want something for convenience. You're the way that you're supposed to present yourself at work, just our ideas of what is supposed to be beautiful, right? You make it. hairstyle and beauty is currency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
What does this
Yeah.
book provide for me, right? What kind of responses am I getting for people? And
Mm-hmm.
so you do something because you're getting a particular response, whether it be
Right.
mine or from somebody else. And
Sure.
so it's very difficult to change that
Yeah.
just because somebody says it might not necessarily be good for you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we say that
Mm-hmm.
about multiple things that happen or
Mm-hmm.
choices that we make in our lives.
Right. 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 But at the bottom, at the end of it all, it's knowledge is power, right? You have the knowledge, you make your choices, but it's not like you don't know anymore, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
of course, not all hair loss in Black women is due to the things that we're doing to ourselves, right? There are
Mm.
actually organic, like medical issues that we have, like this central centrifugal cicatricial alopecia. There's other autoimmune scalp conditions, one particular one called lichen planopilaris, another one called frontal fibrosing alopecia that actually looks very similar to traction alopecia, where you have, thinning of the hairline. This one actually causes recession of the hairline. It's also associated with darkening of the skin and loss of the eyebrows. So when we say when you have hair loss, go to the dermatologist, go to the dermatologist and make sure that you don't have any number of these things. You might think, oh no, this is
I'm
genetic. This is how
sure. Yeah.
Right.
I was
Right.
born. Like, no, maybe it's actually frontal fibrosing alopecia or something. So again, it's just really important to have somebody talk to you and tell you, yes or no.
So let me,
Um,
if I could
just
ask.
if you can look at my face, I'm almost frightened as I'm listening to you. So go
So,
ahead, Ange. Ask your
so
question.
Achiamah, one of the things as Black people,
Yeah.
is when you go to a medical professional
Mhm.
and they look at you for 5 minutes, or they discount what you say is your experience, or they, oh, it's alopecia or whatever, and send you on your merry way. As a Black woman dermatologist, can you say anything about how we might be able to find those doctors who will actually listen and help us, and not just take the money and say thanks for coming and do this, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is there anything
Well,
we can do?
yeah, I mean, I think what you said has actually been documented also in the literature.
Mm-hmm.
Most Black patients want to see race concordant physicians because of all of the unfortunate sequela sometimes that we get from seeing doctors of, other races. And it's not to say there are obviously a number of amazing dermatologists who, focus on hair and who don't,
Sure.
who treat
Sure.
patients of color. There's not even enough Black dermatologists to be able to see all the Black patients, right? So
Mm-hmm.
everybody needs to be able to treat every issue in all races of people, right?
Right.
Like
And
I
that's
think
what we talk about culturally competent medicine.
exactly right.
We see it everywhere,
Exactly.
in all specialties.
Because you're white, I don't treat this particular hair loss, or you're Asian. No, we studied on patients of particularly being in Brooklyn, Black, white, Asian. So I can treat everything, and so it's important that people just have to be interested in it, right? You just have to ask the right questions. Maybe in your residency training program, you didn't have a lot of, a lot of Black patients, but if you practice in an area where you happen to see this population of patients, it's your job. It is your actual job to
It's
be
your duty, your
knowledgeable about that group,
responsibility.
their
Yeah.
cultural practices, and the things to tell them so that you can get them better. The only reason why you're there is to create improvement in somebody's life. And so if you're not knowledgeable
Mm.
about how they live their lives and you can't meet them where they are, then what is our actual purpose? Like, we're not drug dealers. No, we're physicians. We treat the entire person. I'm a dermatologist, yes. I focus on skin, yes. I focus on hair, yes. But I also focus on the person. I have a good
Mm.
referral base of primary doctors, OBGYNs, endocrinologists, stylists, therapists, because hair loss affects all of these different avenues in life. So,
Mm.
in order to address the particular question that you had, I have created 2 directories. One of them is called blackdermdirectory.com that lists many Black dermatologists around the world that I know. And so far, There, we probably have maybe almost 300 doctors on there. So,
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
yep.
Achiamah, listen, this was not a setup. I did not know
I didn't
that this was
know.
so, but I am so grateful. That is like the perfect answer. That is a perfect answer. When I was looking for a therapist, I don't know what I would have done if therapy for Black girls wasn't available, right? It would just have been a very different experience. The weeding out process would have taken much longer, would have been much more stressful, probably would have sent me on a trajectory that I didn't want to go. This is
Absolutely.
amazing. Folks, this will be in our episode notes. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
you worry
All of
about
this
that.
contact and good
Yes. Okay,
information is
continue.
going
I'm
to
so
be.
sorry. Continue. I'm just so excited. I can't.
And the other one is called Docs for Hair. So this is a directory of dermatologists, irrespective of race, who have a little special focus on hair loss. So as dermatologists, we're trained to treat hair, skin, and nails. But obviously, with any type of profession, you're going to sort of subspecialize in, a different topic, right? So there's some
Mm-hmm.
dermatologists who are basically cosmetic dermatologists who focus on, either lasers. Their focus is on injectables, filler, Botox, things like that. So these dermatologists have a special focus on hair loss. They treat everything else, but they've either done additional study, added various things into their office to accommodate patients who have hair loss, and also time, right? Maybe they spend a little bit more time on their hair loss patients. So there's a directory for that as well. And this is really all born out of the need when I need to refer patients out. I don't take insurance. And so I want patients to have an option of other places to go to. The other thing, if my patients travel or go anywhere else, I want to have a good referral base for them to go to. I always tell my patients when they're in my office, if you have a brother, sister, cousin, niece, daughter who has hair loss, make sure that they go to the dermatologist. And instead of like giving them a name, I just give them the directory so that they can find somebody local in their area. And lastly, there are lots of obstacles to women of color getting treated, right? Black women getting treated. And so it's my little way in my little corner of the world to reduce obstacles to being seen.
Yeah.
That is such a generous and kind thing to do, beyond wanting to do it, to actually have done it. And it's so kind, period.
Yeah. And humanistic.
Yeah. Look at you with your humanistic. You just want to mention your
What
award
can
again,
I
didn't you?
say?
Don't you?
I
Don't you?
wasn't saying, but I recognize a humanist when I see one.
You guys are going to have to listen. I think that was season 1, episode 2 or 3, maybe. You'll know what that's all about. We've our whole lives are on these episodes, by the way. You know that, right, Les?
Yeah.
You know that, right? Okay.
Well, that's why we're here. So, Achiamah, I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned patients that may say, well, my mom had hair loss or my grandmother. It's funny that you say that because my mother was just telling me when I told her I was speaking to you that she said, ask her, well, I have hair loss in the it almost looks like male pattern baldness. And she said, and my mother had that. And I think that I got it because it's a genetic predisposition. Is there any genetic components to hair loss or a particular pattern of hair loss?
Yeah, definitely. So, you can have genetic, cultural, because everybody's doing the same cultural practices in the family, right? Like genetic, right? We're all wearing our hair the same way. We've all used the same chemical
Right.
product, right? It's genetic. But then, of course,
Afro sheen.
yeah,
And remember, oh
exactly.
my
So
God,
there
burning our scalps
are
out.
some diseases that can, that have a genetic predisposition.
Mm.
And women can actually have a male type pattern alopecia, androgenic alopecia.
Androgenic. Yep.
When men start to lose their hair, women can have a counterpart to that as well, called female pattern alopecia, and that's actually the most common type of hair loss that we see in women just across the board in general.
Oh.
That's where you see the thinning, the miniaturization of the hair. The parts start to get a little bit wider and things like that. So, and then you can have all these other things in addition to that as we get a little bit older.
let me tell you, I'm turning my microphone on and off because my dog has um, decided to wake up and do her little. So if you see my mouth moving, like make a signal because remind me to
Yeah.
turn my mic back.
No problem.
But Les, could you? How much time do we have? Because I feel like there are like a zillion questions.
We've got
Obviously,
time. We've
you'll
got
be
time.
back. Obviously,
Obviously, for
because there's
sure.
a whole conversation around the products that we use. A
Oh my God.
whole
A
conversation.
whole conversation. That's true.
The whole thing.
What? Beyond shea butter. God bless shea butter. But
Well,
beyond that,
oh yeah. Well, there are all these, these news reports and studies about the association between chemical relaxers and uterine cancer, breast cancer,
yes,
things like
yes. That's starting to show up in my inbox, getting those letters from legal firms trying to, hey, do you have this?
that.
Well, I haven't permed my
Right.
hair in a long time, but Les, can I ask the questions that I got from
I
my
think
folks yet?
now would be a good
It's a
time to
good
ask
time.
some
Okay.
questions
All right,
because
let me
I
pull
just
it.
have so many questions.
I
It's like,
know. Okay. Okay, so here's one. Um, this one asks about um, edges, front edges thinning, but also eyebrows. What
Mhm.
causes that, and is that something that they should see a dermatologist about?
Yeah, so I say if you can get to a dermatologist, then see them about any level of hair loss that you have, especially if you're starting to have eyebrow thinning and you haven't been plucking away. So
Mm-hmm.
eyebrow thinning can be caused by systemic issues such as thyroid problems. It can also be caused by autoimmune alopecia areata that can affect
Wow.
the hairs in the scalp.
mhm.
And
Right.
then just another common one that we see is this. It actually used to be a rare condition, but I'm starting to see it a lot more. This frontal fibrosing alopecia, where you get eyebrow loss and also thinning of the frontal hairline as well. But the most common cause of thinning of the hairline is either traction alopecia and
Mm-hmm.
also female pattern alopecia or androgenic alopecia.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Um, and if you could, since I wear wigs, I make wigs, um, I my reason for starting a wig line is to give Black women some more choices with their hair, and I wear it as a protective style, but also just to change up my look. I don't wear wigs all the time, and I'm not like wearing them around the house and so on. But can you speak to some of the maybe best practices around wearing wigs that you might share with our audience?
I mean, I would say, the medicine part is probably the easiest part because
Mm-hmm.
I read a lot. I love to read about alopecia. The most challenging part about my job is talking about how women should style their hair. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very,
Mm-hmm.
you can imagine, a very, very touchy topic,
Sure.
particularly
Mhm.
with a hair loss issue.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with the hairstyle unless it has a problem with you. That's like how I start most things.
That right there.
That's hashtag.
Okay.
That right there. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
That is a hashtag.
The issue with any hairstyle is based on so many factors.
Mm-hmm.
Your genetic predisposition, the current fragility of your hair,
Mm-hmm.
how the style is installed, and
Mm-hmm.
on and on and on and on.
Right. Right.
You shouldn't do anything and shouldn't, you can do anything you want to, but
Right.
it's probably not the best idea to do any one thing unless it's your own hair for any extended period of time on a repeated basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you brought up wigs, right?
Yeah.
Most wigs, the undersurface of them is a little rough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that you can get something called frictional alopecia, where the frontal part of the hair, obviously, it's a continuation of your skin. So those hairs in the front are quite fragile. You're washing your face. The hair is just, can break a little bit easy. So it can cause the hair to break in that area, and it can cause
Mm.
thinning. And then
Mm-hmm.
in some people, it can actually cause traction alopecia. And when we talk about traction alopecia, there's always a continuum, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you can have a traction alopecia that is reversible. So you stop that particular, practice, and then the hair comes back. And
Mhm.
then traction alopecia that's irreversible, where you have to pay thousands of dollars for a hair transplant, because that's the only way that you can get the hair to come back. So if you're wearing wigs, braids, and your hairline is completely fine, although I say, wear your hair out every once in a while, then that's your business, right? But if you are doing that and you're starting to notice thinning, and then you keep doing the same thing, that is where the problem comes in. Because there are lots of examples of women who wear braids, who wear cornrows, they wear their wigs and their hair grows down to their butts, and then their hairline is perfect. That's fine. But, people come to me when they have problems. And so we need to do risk reduction when we're talking about any particular hairstyle. So if we talk about wearing wigs, if one insists on wearing a wig, or because of the level of hair loss that you have, you need to wear a wig in order to transition while we try to grow some of your hair back. You want to try to wear a silk or satin cap underneath of the wig, so that whatever is gliding against your hairline is, is smooth and soft, and not sort of rough and rubbing. Try to avoid those stocking caps, because they're quite drying. And you can find a lot of on Etsy, or you can, maybe make them yourself. And I don't like the word protective hairstyling. I don't know where that came from. I get it, but don't at the same time. Because some of these practices, again, because they're done on a repeated basis, because people think that it's going to grow their hair, ends up, creating problems, right? If you, I'm from Ghana. Freaking braids are life, right? But me, I can't do braids. I've been wearing braids for a while because it causes me to have traction alopecia. The braiding hair, the synthetic braiding hair, actually also fractures my hair shaft, because of the way that my hair shaft is. It's just really fragile. Whenever I take braids out, my hair is worse off than it actually started. And some synthetic hair can actually cause eczema in some patients as well. So it's you. Don't look at what anybody else does. Look at what happens to you when you do a particular something, right? I want to avoid styles in general that are like really tight. If something hurts you, it's not the style for you. Do you know what pain is? Pain is a signal in the body that there is danger approaching.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger.
So if there is pain in a hairstyle, that means your inflammatory cells are acting up. They're coming to protect you. And if they keep doing that over and over again, they're going to start releasing factors that in their attempt are going to shut things down, which produce a scar. So you should never have pain when you do a hairstyle. It just doesn't make any sense. Shouldn't have to braid. That's not the person for you.
That used to be the sign that the braids are gonna last a long time.
I know.
Let it hurt. Let it, and it's like,
exactly. I know.
It's so sad.
We were so ignorant.
That's what Mummy used to say, though. Poverty is such a thing, because it's like you want these things to last. That's why you buy your children shoes that are 2 sizes too big, because they'll grow into them, and then the child suffers for 2 years until they fit the shoes. You want your hairstyle that you paid this much money for to last a long time, so you end up losing your hair over it. But we can do better. We can do better.
Well, we do better when we know more.
Yes,
that's the true. More we know, the better we can do. What I heard you say, though, Achiamah, just reminds me of a vicious cycle of traction alopecia, perhaps, and hair loss, where we notice that we're losing hair in certain ways. So as a result, we want to cover it up and continue wearing a wig or a hair piece or a braid style or whatever it is, that might be exacerbating the problem. But it's like now we really have to cover it up. And
that's right.
That's what happens. Okay, I have 1 or 2 other questions how do you stop or prevent hair thinning after menopause?
Well, I think the first thing to do is to identify what the condition is, right? Because just because you're postmenopausal doesn't mean that you still also don't have another hair loss condition. So I would say first, just get a proper diagnosis. If you have female pattern hair loss or androgenic alopecia, in women, it's multifactorial, due to a little bit of androgen sensitivity. So the androgen receptor on the hair follicle just becomes a little bit more sensitive and really binds a lot more to these male androgens. And you can get, thinning of the hair that's caused by slowing down of the hair growth cycle and miniaturization of those hairs. And so there are lots of things that we can do for that now, various medications, topical preparations, lots of procedures, injections. I mean, you name it, there's at least 4 or 5 procedures that we do in the office in order to help.
And that's if it's due to that androgen insensitivity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I see. Is there any relationship between menopause and a particular type of hair loss?
We tend to see more androgenic alopecia as we get older, right? Because the ratio or proportion of estrogen to testosterone changes a little bit. So
mm-hmm.
Okay, I had to make sure it was turned back on. Okay, just one more. Are there recent approved treatments for hair loss? This person has been having hair loss for over 10 years and was told that they have alopecia. But like you just said before, that's the overarching term, right?
So we never
what is their last name? Is it middle name and last name, or just the last name?
You should never accept the word alopecia.
It's not a first name basis.
It's not a.
What's your last name, Mr. Alopecia?
Do not accept. Never accept alopecia. Just so, absolutely right.
Right. So if it's alopecia areata, which Auntie Leslie brought up earlier.
That was the only thing I remembered from medical school.
There is actually an FDA-approved medication called baricitinib. That's been a game changer for us. It's the first FDA-approved medication for this condition. And it's actually a rheumatologic medication, but some of the early studies found patients who were being treated with that and had concurrent alopecia areata maybe for 20 years, because alopecia areata, you can actually lose all of your hair. Can become completely bald from that condition. That's the most extensive case, alopecia universalis or totalis. And even after having it for that long and they use the medication for it, the person grew all of their hair back.
Wow. Can you repeat the name?
So that means there was no scarring involved, right?
Exactly. That means that there exactly.
And the medication, it sounded like an immunologic.
Exactly. So it's called.
Okay, so let's explain what that is.
You see what they're doing, guys? The 2 doctors are ganging up on the engineer. It's not fair, but it's okay. It's their show. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so it's in the category of medication called a JAK inhibitor. And so it's an immunologic medication. And so that's why it works, because it takes away all of those inflammatory cells that are causing the problem in alopecia areata. And because the hair follicle is like really still working, once you get those inflammatory cells out of the way, then the hair follicle can just get back to doing its job.
My gosh.
It's a miracle. It really is. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there like a
old minoxidil?
Yeah. What about those things? Yeah.
I remember that, from years ago.
Still use minoxidil.
It still works?
Yeah, still
depending on the cause.
Well, I would say minoxidil is sort of a non-specific hair growth stimulator. So if you have any fine, small hairs, minoxidil can work across the board in all types of hair loss. But now we're also using oral minoxidil. So minoxidil was originally a blood pressure medication and still is a blood pressure medication. And actually the reason why we made it into a topical is because people found when they were using it for blood pressure, they were also growing hair. But in order to reduce some of the systemic side effects that they were getting from the oral, they started giving it topically. And that's why Rogaine FDA approved for hair loss. However, we now use low dose oral minoxidil, which has been also a game changer in my office and many dermatology offices across the country and in the world, because it works very well. With topical minoxidil, sometimes the vehicle that they make it in can be a little bit drying. It has glycol in it, which can be irritating to some patients. And particularly when you're already starting out with hair that's fragile because you have an underlying inflammatory scalp disease, using topical minoxidil Rogaine is, sometimes not a great idea. And it's often easier to use the oral version as long as you don't have any contraindications.
Okay. This is the last question.
I think we just have time for one more question.
It's more about hair where you don't want it than hair loss. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
So this one is about chin hairs, and then I guess some scarring or hyperpigmentation when they try to address the chin hairs. Yes, and that's the last one I have for you.
Sure. So chin hairs, we always, depending on your age, we always want to make sure that there's no systemic hormonal abnormalities, right? Because women are not necessarily supposed to have hair in that area. So you go to your primary doctor, your GYN, or your endocrinologist, or me, and we rule out things called polycystic ovary, right? PCOS. And we can put you on medication to help to sort of balance out your hormones a little bit more. Topically, there are medications that we can use. They used to have a medication called Vanica cream, which slowed down the hair growth cycle on the chin, but I believe they stopped making it several months ago. But we often give oral spironolactone, which is also a blood pressure medication, but also blocks the androgens, or those sort of bad acting hormones that tend to cause, excess hair growth on the face. Laser hair removal with dermatologist. You can do electrolysis. It's the hair that's kind of growing back into the skin that tends to cause the bumps and the hyperpigmentation. So getting the hair out will really help to reduce that problem. And I think laser.
I see. I always thought it was the constant messing with the hair or plucking it or pulling it that causes that hyperpigmentation or irritation.
That's part of it. That's absolutely part of it.
I'm pointing to my chin. I don't have that problem.
That is absolutely part of it. Yes. Constant picking, rubbing, any constant manipulation of your face is going to cause hyperpigmentation. So if you get rid of the hair in the first place, then you don't have the sensation of wanting to pull the hair out. And then, of course, there's a number of various creams, lotions, potions, and chemical peels. Rid of the hyperpigmentation.
Let me tell you, our episode notes are gonna be like 3 pages long. In other words, we just have to go see the doctor.
We just have to go see the doctor. And how about this one? How about this amazing doctor?
Do you do televisits?
I do. Not for hair. Not for hair. If it's an initial visit, I gotta go through every single part. But I do televisits for the face, definitely, and for rashes and things like that. Yeah.
I know. I just have to say, I've called you a couple of times and said, sent you a picture. What do you think this is? It's like, here I am texting her these photos. But you've always been sweet. And I got to thank you also for the recommendation for the skin regimen. I've been using it and I'm looking 10 years younger by the day. It's working for me.
Listen, she's been showing off with it. Let me just make it. She's been showing off with it. Very much so. But it's okay. It's all right. I'm coming for you, Leslie.
I think we're at the end of our segment.
Listen, I've been like this.
Me too.
Good. I'm so glad that we were able to do this. I think it's important to reach all audiences. And again, I mean, I'm only one person. There's so many doctors and dermatologists who really care, who want to help you, and just go and see somebody locally, right? Go on Black.
But only one of them is my niece.
But I don't take insurance, and that might not be, okay for people.
Yeah, that might be a barrier to some people, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. There are lots of other doctors who are amazing. A lot of other dermatologists who are amazing, who do great work, and who really, care about patients with alopecia, and who are very, very knowledgy about how to treat them. So, you got to also do your due diligence and look them up. And, if you don't like the answer from one person, then you got 200 or 300 more.
Yeah,
I got it. And this is typically a covered condition. It's not considered cosmetic.
No, you can. No, when I used to take insurance before, I would send it through the insurance company. Yeah,
I see. Okay.
Just on the
all these nuggets of information.
Just on the lack of insurance, I mean, obviously, it is something that has to be considered. However, you can make a choice about where you spend your money, how you spend your money. To get what you need, to get what you need for your life. And so I know that it is something that is an important consideration, but it doesn't have to be, oh, well, I'm not doing that because of that. It could be that is the best doctor. Achiamah is the best doctor for that situation. And so, save your money someplace else to get this. I'm just saying that is also a possibility.
What I often will do, I will maybe start the initial workup, make the initial diagnosis, If they can't do the biopsy with me because it's out of pocket, then I will write down where I think the biopsy should be, and then I'll refer them to a dermatologist who takes their insurance, where they can get the biopsy, where it might be covered by their insurance. And then if they want to come back and see me every 3-4 months or every 6 months, then we can share. I think that you have to do things that work for your budget.
Yeah.
We all have budgets, right? It sounds good that, just go see the person who's the best, but that might not actually be practical. So we have to do the that's practical, that works for our
right.
And that we're going to be able to do for a long period of time, right? Because most of the time treating hair loss requires a good long-term relationship with your doctor. Maybe you have to go for injections, or, it just kind of depends. So either I start and you finish with somebody who, is in your network, or we share you and you come every 6 months or so, just so I can make sure everything is going okay. Or you see me once and then you just follow up with, there's any number of permutations of
of ways to get
what you want and what you need in order to make it better, right? Because we're all here for the same goal. Whether I can do that for you, that's amazing. But if not, I'm perfectly okay with that too.
Right. That's so collaborative.
This is
very
where
nice.
We're gonna stop.
Oh my gosh. All right, we're going to have to book her. Right after this call, we're going to book you on our calendar for the next one, the next specialization. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
This was just wonderful and so informative. I learned so much and I have so many more questions. So, you're going to come back, right?
Oh, I don't have a choice. We're Ghanaian.
We're recording.
So oblige.
Exactly. All right, love.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
This has been another wonderful, informative episode of Black Boomer Besties from Brooklyn.
Black Boomer Besties from Brooklyn.